Abused German Shepherd cries at every touch, until one woman changes his life forever. The shelter was filled with barking dogs, some jumping excitedly against their cages, eyes bright with hope. They wagged their tails, pressing their noses against the bars, desperate for attention. They had not yet given up on humans. But in the farthest, darkest corner of the room, one dog did not move. Curled up into a tight ball, his body trembled like a leaf in the wind. His fur was rough and patchy, scars covering his skin like painful reminders of a past no one knew. His ribs stuck out beneath his dull coat, proof of days spent hungry, neglected, forgotten. He did not bark. He did not whimper, until someone tried to touch him. A shelter worker knelt beside his kennel, moving slowly, carefully, so as not to scare him. They whispered gentle words, reaching out with a soft hand. And then, a sound that broke the heart of anyone who heard it. The moment fingers brushed against his fur, the dog let out a sharp, broken cry, not of aggression, but of pure, unbearable fear. He flinched so violently that his body slammed against the metal bars behind him. His breathing came in panicked gasps. He squeezed his eyes shut, pressing himself into the corner as if trying to disappear. He had learned one thing in his life: touch meant pain. The worker sighed, pulling back their hand. "This one?" they muttered to a colleague. "He's too damaged. No one will want him." Other staff members agreed. He had been in the shelter for weeks. No one had shown interest. Who would want a dog so terrified of love? But what they didn't know was that fate was about to step in. Because somewhere out there, a woman was about to walk through those doors and change his life forever. The heavy rain drummed against the shelter's roof as the glass door swung open. A cold gust of wind followed, scattering raindrops onto the floor. The few visitors inside barely glanced up, their attention fixed on the eager dogs pressing their noses against the bars. But the woman who had just entered wasn't here to browse. She had come with purpose. Her name was Emma. She had always believed that the most broken souls needed love the most. And today, she had come looking for a dog that no one else wanted. A shelter worker approached, offering a polite but tired smile. "Looking for anything in particular?" Emma nodded. "I want to meet the one no one else wants. The dog who needs love the most." The worker hesitated. Most people came looking for friendly dogs. Ones that would run up and lick their hands, ready to go home the same day. But Emma wasn't most people. With a silent nod, the worker led her past rows of cages, past the playful, tail-wagging dogs, past the ones who barked excitedly as she walked by. And then they stopped at the very last kennel. Emma's breath caught in her throat. In the farthest corner of the small cage, a frail German shepherd was curled up so tightly, he barely looked alive. His ribs pressed against his skin, his dull fur missing patches, scars running along his legs. He looked like a ghost of what he once was. But what broke Emma's heart the most was that he didn't move. Every other dog in the shelter had reacted to her presence, wagging, barking, something. But this dog? He didn't even lift his head. She lowered herself to the ground, pressing her hand gently against the cage. "Hey, buddy." Nothing. His body trembled, but he didn't look at her. It was as if he had already given up. Emma's chest tightened. What had this poor creature been through? How many times had he been hurt? How many times had a hand reached for him, only to cause pain? A worker sighed behind her. "That one's a lost cause," they muttered. "We don't know his full story, but he came in with signs of heavy abuse. He won't let anyone touch him without crying." Emma turned back to the dog, her heart aching. The way he flinched at movement, the way he pressed himself into the furthest corner, trying to disappear. This wasn't just fear. This was deep, unbearable pain. And yet, she stayed. She sat cross-legged, keeping her distance, speaking softly. "I'm not here to hurt you, I promise." Nothing. No reaction. No flicker of trust. Time passed. The rain outside turned into a soft drizzle, tapping against the windows. Other visitors came and went, chatting excitedly as they picked out their new pets. But Emma didn't move. She just waited, Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. Workers passed by, glancing at her with curiosity. Why was she wasting her time on a dog that refused to be saved? But Emma didn't see a lost cause. She saw a soul still clinging to life, even if just barely. And then it happened. So small, so quick. She almost didn't notice. The dog's sunken eyes flickered open. Not fully, just enough to steal a glance at her. It was the briefest moment, but Emma saw something in them. Not trust, not hope, but a question. Are you different? Emma smiled softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, buddy, I am. She had found him, and she wasn't leaving without him. The metal latch clicked open, and the sound alone sent a violent tremor through the German shepherd's frail body. He pressed himself against the back of the cage, eyes wild with fear, his breath ragged. He had learned the hard way that human hands meant pain. Emma saw it in every inch of him, the way his body folded in on itself, the way his paws curled inward as if trying to disappear. His ribs jutted out beneath dull fur, his eyes hollow, stripped of the light that a dog should have. He wasn't just afraid. He was broken. The shelter worker sighed, shaking their head. He's been like this for weeks. No one can get near him. If we push, he might snap. Emma didn't move. She simply lowered herself onto the cold concrete floor, sitting just outside the cage. She didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just sat there and waited. The minutes stretched painfully. The shelter was filled with noise. Other dogs barking, claws scraping against metal, the occasional muffled voice of a worker in the distance. But in that small, shadowed corner where the German shepherd cowered, there was only silence. Emma knew she couldn't force trust. She had to earn it. She exhaled slowly, relaxing her posture, making herself smaller, less threatening. And then, almost imperceptibly, he moved. Just a shift of his weight, his body trembling violently. His sunken eyes flicked toward her, searching, wary. A minute passed, then another, and then the smallest step forward. Emma's heart clenched. Don't react. Don't scare him. She kept her gaze soft, her hands resting gently in her lap. Another step. His muscles were still tight, his ears pinned back, his entire frame coiled as if expecting a blow. He was terrified, but somehow, his desperation to escape his loneliness was stronger. When he was just a foot away from the open door, Emma did something simple. She turned her palm upward, resting it on the ground, offering but not insisting. The dog flinched. His breath hitched, his body stiff as a board. A battle raged inside him. Memories of cruelty versus the unfamiliar gentleness in front of him. Seconds passed like hours, and then his nose twitched. He leaned forward, the tiniest movement, and sniffed. Emma barely contained her breath. He was so close. Then, suddenly, his eyes widened, as if realizing what he had just done. He jerked backward violently, retreating into the darkness of the cage, his sides heaving. Emma didn't move. She didn't say a word. Instead, she just smiled softly. He had tried, and that was enough for today. Trust wasn't built in a moment. It was built in tiny, fragile steps. And even if he didn't know it yet, he had already taken the first one. The shelter was silent in the late afternoon light, the golden rays filtering through the small, dust-coated windows. Most of the other dogs had settled into quiet, their restless barking now reduced to the occasional shuffle of paws against the cold floors. But in the corner cage, the battle for trust was still being fought, one silent moment at a time. Emma returned the next day, just as she had promised, though she had never spoken the words aloud. Promises, she knew, weren't made with sound. They were made with presence. And so she sat. The German shepherd had not forgotten her, but neither had he accepted her. He watched her warily, ears flicking forward only to press back again. His ribs still showed through his patchy fur, his body tense, but his eyes held something different today, curiosity. Emma did the same as before. No sudden movements, no reaching hands. She simply placed her palm, face up, between them, close enough for him to reach but far enough that he could still refuse. Minutes passed, and then something changed. The dog shifted forward, his movements stiff, hesitant, as if each inch was a battle within himself. His breath was ragged, his frame trembling. Emma didn't move. Another inch. His nose quivered. A pause. Then he touched her. Not with his teeth. Not with fear. But with his nose. A soft, fleeting press of cold against her skin. It lasted no longer than a heartbeat, but to Emma, it felt like an eternity. Her own breath caught in her throat, her chest tightening with the weight of the moment. She wanted to cry, but she didn't. She wouldn't scare him. This was everything. For the first time, he had chosen trust. It was small, fragile, and so delicate it could shatter with the wrong reaction. But it was real, and it was his. Emma slowly, carefully, turned her palm over, letting her fingers brush against the cold concrete floor. An invitation. He hesitated. His ears twitched. His body still braced for the cruelty he had known for so long. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he pressed his nose against her fingers again. Longer this time. A breath. A touch. A whisper of trust. And just like that, the world changed. For him. For Emma. For both of them. The first touch wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of everything. Trust was a delicate thing. Could take weeks, months, even years to build. But one wrong move, one moment of fear, and it could shatter like fragile glass. Emma knew this. That's why, even after the German Shepherd's first touch, she remained patient. Every day she came back. Every day, she sat in the same spot, offered the same quiet presence, and waited. And every day he got a little closer, a little braver. The first time she reached her fingers toward him, he flinched, but didn't run. The second time, he let her rest a hand near his paw. By the end of the week, he allowed her to touch his fur. Just a brief, feather-light stroke before he backed away. But it was progress. Real, undeniable progress. Then came the real test. Emma knew that trust inside the cage was one thing, but could he trust her outside of it? Could he take a step beyond the walls that had become both his prison and his protection? The shelter staff had their doubts. He's not ready, they warned. If he panics, he might bolt. But Emma wasn't forcing him. She was offering him a choice. She approached his cage as always, crouching low, her palm resting open on the ground. Only this time she did something different. She unlatched the door, creaked open just an inch. The German Shepherd's ears flicked up. His body tensed. His muscles coiled as if expecting something. A trick, a punishment, a reason to regret this moment. But none of that came. Emma simply sat there, waiting, like she always did. The dog's eyes darted between her and the open door. His breath was uneven, his body trembling as he battled the demons of his past. For years, doors had meant pain. They had meant being dragged out by force. They had meant cold nights in the dark, beatings, fear, and hopelessness. But now the door was open, and no one was making him leave. The seconds stretched endlessly. His mind was at war. Step forward, or stay in the past. Emma saw it the exact moment when the shift happened. His eyes softened. His ears twitched forward. And then he moved. Not by force. Not out of fear. But by choice. One trembling paw touched the cold shelter floor outside the cage. His breath hitched, but he didn't stop. Another step. Then another. And just like that, he was free. Not just from the cage, but from the past that had held him prisoner for so long. Emma let out a shaky breath, her chest tight with emotion. She didn't celebrate, didn't rush forward. She just waited, her eyes meeting his. And then, something she never expected happened. The German Shepherd. ***, the same dog who once cried at every touch, who had flinched from kindness, who had known nothing but fear. ***, stepped forward and pressed his head against her chest. Not in fear, not in hesitation, but in trust, in love. Emma's eyes burned with tears as she ran her fingers gently through his fur. This was it, the final test, and he had passed. Or maybe they both had. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the shelter's yard. The German Shepherd stood at the threshold of a new life, his paws pressing into the cool earth outside his cage. The past clung to him like a shadow, but for the first time, it no longer defined him. Emma knelt beside him, her fingers grazing his fur as he took in the world beyond the bars. It was as if he were seeing it for the first time, not as a place of danger but of possibility, of hope. She didn't rush him. She never did. Instead, she let him decide. And then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he wagged his tail. It wasn't much, just the smallest sway, uncertain and unpracticed. But to Emma it was everything. It was his first sign of joy. The shelter staff watched in stunned silence. The same dog who had once cowered in the corner, the one who had flinched at the lightest touch, was now walking beside Emma. Head held high, step steady, eyes filled with something no one had ever seen in them before. Peace. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The German Shepherd, once a ghost of a dog, began to transform before everyone's eyes. He learned to play. Awkward at first, unsure of what to do with a ball Emma gently rolled his way. But soon, he was bounding through the grass, ears perked up, eyes sparkling with excitement. He learned to trust, no longer shrinking from the hands that reached for him, but leaning into them, finding comfort where he once found fear. And most of all, he learned to love. Late at night, when Emma sat on her porch, gazing at the stars, he would press himself against her side, resting his head in her lap. The same dog who once feared touch now craved it, because touch, for the first time in his life, meant something beautiful. Then, one crisp autumn morning, the final chapter of his journey began. Emma clipped a leash onto his collar, not as a restraint, but as a bridge between the past and the future. She led him toward her car, the door open, waiting. This time he didn't hesitate. He hopped in, curled up on the seat, and looked at her, not with fear, but with trust. And as they drove away from the shelter, away from the life that had once broken him, the German Shepherd did something he had never done before. He rested his head on Emma's shoulder and let out a deep, contented sigh. A sigh that whispered, "I'm home." From broken to whole, from fear to love, his story wasn't just about survival. It was about healing. And in the end, he hadn't just found a home. He had found a family. Not every story of an abused animal ends this way. Too many dogs never get the chance to heal, to trust, or to feel love again. Too many remain behind cold metal bars, their eyes filled with silent pleas that go unheard. But this story is proof that love changes everything. It proves that patience, kindness, and a little bit of faith can mend even the most shattered souls. This German Shepherd was once afraid of the world, but today he walks with his head held high, his heart no longer burdened by fear. And all it took was one person who refused to give up on him. How many others are still waiting? How many broken souls are out there, just hoping for someone like Emma to show them that not all humans are cruel? If this story touched your heart, remember, you can be that person. Whether it's through adopting, fostering, donating, or simply sharing their stories, you have the power to make a difference. Because in the end, every animal deserves what this dog finally found: a second chance, a home, and love that never runs out. This German Shepherd story had a happy ending, but so many others are still waiting. Right now, in shelters across the world, there are animals just like him, scared, abandoned, and longing for someone to believe in them. Yellow Heart, wanna help? Here's how you can make a difference. White heavy checkmark, adopt. Give a shelter animal a second chance at life. White heavy checkmark, foster. Provide a safe home while they wait for their forever family. White heavy checkmark, donate. Even small contributions help feed, shelter, and care for them. White heavy checkmark, share this story. Awareness saves lives. Your voice can help animals in need. If the story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Be the reason a broken soul learns to trust again. Because love doesn't just heal wounds, it saves lives. Globe showing America's, will you be their second chance? Backhand index pointing right, take action today. Visit your local shelter, support a rescue, and spread the message. Together we can change lives, one rescue at a time. Red Heart Paw Prints.